Hashem Yahawashi Pilgrims.
We're a branch of the GMS Washington DC camp, and basically since we have a bigger camp, we spread out, some of the brothers may be out Silver Spring, we usually prophesy in the DC area, but as of right now, we in the PA area, and as always, we out here to preach the word, the word is more so geared towards the Lord's chosen people, the Israelites. So they consist of you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, and the Israelite foreigners that may look like heathen, but they're not heathen because your father's seed line traces back to one of the 12 progenitors of the 12 tribes of Israel that we have written on this chart.
Yep.
But even more so than that, it's geared towards the elect out of the nation of Israel, which is the small remnant, the chosen and chosen, the ones actually going to repent, basically turn back and seek the Lord in obedience for salvation. As far as when you heathen, you're going to learn about your judgment to come and what it's going to be in the kingdom of heaven, ultimately being under subjection to the Israelites. But like I said, we still be out here to do ultimately what the Lord commanded us to do. And we out here to do what the Lord commanded us to do because, according to what's written in the scriptures, the people that don't take heed to what the Lord tells them, they end up being destroyed.
Yep.
That's right. This is Luke chapter 14, verse 23. And the Lord said unto the servant, go out into the highways and the edges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled.
So the Lord said, go out in the highways and the hedges, unlike, the Christians, the so-called Christians, because they're not the followers of Yahawashi Mashiach, the world they usually call Jesus Christ. The Lord said, go out in the highways and the hedges, basically the streets, the highways and the byways, to compel these people to come in, And when you go into that word compel, it goes into ultimately, to threaten, because the Lord is threatening the downfall of this wicked and polluted kingdom, I call it, Esau is the kingdom, because as the scripture says, Job 9:24,
hold down the
the
camera.
earth was given into the hands of the wicked. There's three classifications of men. We got the sons of God, with Israel, Yasharallah, and the Hebrew men there. We prince of power. Then we got the sons of men, the regular, national heathen. And then we got the sons of the wicked. And that's the so-called white man, like I said. Before we spoke about Esau Edom. That's the one that's ruling the earth right now. And as we know, like I said, his kingdom is coming to an end. His kingdom is coming to an end because that's based on prophecy. And that's what we're out here to do. Prophesy, as we know. Prophesy means to say before. We tell them what's going to happen in the future. Of course, we don't know each intricate detail of each individual's life, but we know according to the scriptures what's the big picture, what's to come, Because the Lord has revealed those things to us.
It's Job chapter 20, verse 4. It says, knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed upon earth, and the triumphing of the wicked is short.
Yeah, the time for the wicked is short, so these devils are empowered, but it's only for a small season. Yeah, I know it gets tough, it's hard because the fact that they're the basis of man, as you say. But the time for the wicked is short, they don't have that much time in rulership, like I said, the time may go, it feel like it's going slow because ultimately they're in hell. But ultimately the Lord is actually speeding up the time, as we can see, we basically flew through 2025, and as you can see, as the time is the beginning of 2026 has started, this devil that's in power, DJ Trump, he just causing all types of hell and chaos, because that's ultimately what they were created to do.
And the joy of the hypocrite or the ungodly, but for a moment.
As you can see, their joy is coming to an end. And that includes a lot of people that's basically in love with this kingdom, The fun, the mirth is being taken away from this polluted and wicked man.
This Sirach chapter 10 and verse 8. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another.
As you can see, who does that describe? You know, a lot of people are waking up to see the unrighteous, you know, and wicked and richest guy by the sea, you know, especially people waking up to the time of when Christopher Colon so-called discovered America. A lot of people are starting to understand and know that they basically stole the land. Then they consider the people that was already here to be illegal immigrants and things of that nature. Like I said, they're hypocrites, you know. How you come over to and you find land and there's other people that's already occupying it, and now you upset and talking about calling the people immigrants and saying that they need to get savages and things of that nature, and say that they need to get kicked out of the land when you basically did what you claiming that they did, you know. But that's the thing, you know, that's how we know that this is the devil, you know. Yeah, and that's how we know this is the devil. And ultimately, that's why the Lord is destroying this kingdom, and that's why a lot of wars and things of nature is going on in the earth. Because as we know, everything is in the hands and power of Yahawashi Pilgrims.
It's Amos chapter 3, verse 6. Shall a trumpet be blown in the city, and the people not be afraid?
And the thing is, that's what we're doing. When we out here, we're blowing the trumpet, warning our people. So the trumpet be blown in the city, and the people be not afraid. But as we can see, the only ones that's afraid, like I said in the beginning, is the ones who this truth is more so geared towards, the elect. We're the ones that fear, you know, daily, week in and week out of what's to come. You know, we fear because we hope that we're going to be delivered when all hell breaks loose. While the rest of the world is just walking around as if things are going to go back to normal. But we know that's not going to happen because we know the judgment of what the Lord got for this place.
Shall there be evil in the city, and the Most High have not done it?
Yeah, shall there be evil in the city and the Most High has not done it? So, for the people that believe that the Most High is going to send his son Yahawashi back cracking them clouds with hugs and kisses for everybody, that's not going to happen, you know? People think that the Lord, like I said, won't do good or do evil. That's why they like to fit, you know? And that's why the Lord is going to judge these people. A lot of people are blinded, you know? They still got that covering cast over there in darkness. That's why the scriptures talk about the darkness and the light. And if you're not following the light, you're going to continue to stumble all the way until you be destroyed.
Verse 7. Surely the Most High will do nothing. He revealeth his secrets unto his servants, the prophets.
Yeah, so like I said, the Lord has revealed the main gist of what's going to happen, his secrets, you know. And he only revealed it to those that love him. You know, the ones that believe, you know, the servants, the prophets, the men of the Lord with the Spirit on, and that's everybody to come out here and teach. And then he put the Spirit on the rest of the hopeful elect, you know, to believe on the words, you know. The ones that believe on the words is the ones that hear his voice, as he said, you know. His sheep hear his voice, you know. And a lot of people don't hear his voice because they're like I said, they're blind, their ears are stopped up. They're in love with this kingdom, you know, the wickedness, you know. Their deeds are evil, as the Lord said.
This is Psalms chapter 25, verse 14. It says, the secret of the Most High is with them that fear him, and he will shew them his covenant.
Yeah, that goes along with that Proverbs 1:7. It says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, you know. And it says, for fools despise wisdom and instruction, roughly paraphrased, you know. That's the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, because that's ultimately what we're going to need. And that also lines up with Isaiah 33:6. It says that wisdom and knowledge should be the stability of thy time. You know, that's going to keep us stable. When we talk about wisdom and knowledge, we talk about the wisdom and knowledge of what's pleasing and acceptable to the Yahawashi Pilgrims, ultimately the true understanding of these scriptures. So it says the wisdom and knowledge should be the stability of thy time and strength of salvation. The fear of the Lord is the treasure. Yeah, but this is a great treasure that we have. You know, it's the biggest treasure that we get that we can receive. You know, anything else is vanity. You know, the working at 9 to 5. You know, especially like we were speaking on during the time of inflation. You know, basically just working. You're like a hamster on a wheel, constantly going while these devils are continuously printing more money, and the value of the dollar is continuing to weaken, so you just constantly working. And like I said, the statistics show that you gotta work, even harder. Just the painful things that you could have paid for in the past with working less hours,
The scriptures say that we are yet this day in our captivity, and one of the easiest ways to tell that is, us having to pay taxes, us having to work and not get paid wages enough to afford basic housing. We can't living in this society. You can't afford the basic necessities that you need for life. You can't really start a family because you can't afford it. You can't buy a house because it's too expensive. Like, and the thing is that it's not like the work is becoming less. If you have a job right now, you're working harder now than ever. If I can bring this up, this is Haggai chapter 1 verse 6. It says, "Ye have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put into a bag with holes." And nothing makes you feel like that more than, like the brother mentioned, inflation. No matter that little 1%, 2% raise that they give you in your job every year, doesn't count for the inflation that happens year by year. It could be an 8% increase in inflation, and you get a 2% increase in your pay. So nothing can make you feel like you're just throwing away money, such like inflation will, because you have the same job, you get the same wages, but the money that you're spending on the things that you always spent it on is worth less. And the dollar is getting devalued every single day. This society is going down economically first, and once it goes down economically first, we'll see the rest of the prophecies happen right after. The plagues will follow. Shortly after the economic collapse. You gotta know.
That's how you know that these are the devil, because like you said, the Sunday schools, they don't even teach these types of things, They just, like they say, they sing you go to school, you get indoctrinated basically to be a continuous slave for these devils, They don't tell you how the money system works, like the guy with it. I think Henry Ford said basically if they knew how the money worked, basically it's gonna be a problem. This Russian soldiers, but it's a quote that he said. Basically, if people figured out how things work, basically they're gonna be pissed off. They don't teach those things, like I said in school. They want you to be docile. They want you to be a good, obedient slave. I mean, even the scriptures tell us,
Henry Ford was one of the first people that started during the Industrial Revolution, that started that 9-to-5 wage slave, that wage slave system. Assembly line, so basically assembly line, work, and that quote really surmises how they wanted the rest of this, society to be thereafter, but now, now that idea, they want to retire it, and lead us into this new world order that they have set up. Because that old world that they set up, that can only be for a specific time period. But the new world order that they want to set up has nothing to do with assembly line slavery. They want everything. They want your essence. They want your soul. They'll let AI do the rest, but they want that chip inside your body.
People really understood, like the brother said, if people really understood how the economy works, how money works, man, America would be in a blaze right now, man. That Nixon get rid of the gold standard, so the dollar got back by gold. A lot of people in 2026, man, they believe that when they deposit money into the bank, they believe that their precious money is still sitting there in the bank. That's not how it works, man. This debt currency that we have, man, you go to the bank. If everybody was to go to the bank and try to withdraw their cash, man, it won't be there. This is the fiat currency, man. This shit is not real. So when people are about to come into realize, your brother mentioned inflation. We're dealing with inflation. When inflation's on the rise, that means what? The interest is on the rise. sharecropping with the slaves, whatever. The reason what made sharecropping so hard back in those days is that Edom would put high ass interest on the farming tools for Jacob, so that the interest was so high that they couldn't really pay. They couldn't pay it back, man. So they essentially went back into slavery because the interest is so high, man. And that's what's going on in today's time, man. The inflation's so high, interest is so high, it's damn near people working for free. You know? We live in a time, you gotta remember, man. You live in a time where the average American can't even afford a home. Who said that famous quote, man? These people pretty much will be happy with nothing. We don't have nothing, man. You know? So, and then the slavery that Edom wants our people in even further to the point. A digital slavery, man. A slavery with an emulated chip in your right hand and forehead, man. So Edom is out for total control, man. And the only thing that can stop him is the Lord Yahawashi Pilgrims, man. You know? So this is the time that we approaching, man. We approaching the time where the Lord is about to send a total collapse to society and ultimately to save his people, man. You know, to send the salvation for the elected and children. This place gotta go, man. You know?
Ultimately, I think you're making reference to Klaus Schwab.
Yeah, Klaus Schwab, yeah.
You will own nothing and be happy. That's what it's coming to. A lot of people gonna find out the hard way. All this, whatever you've done to achieve what you achieved, it's all gonna be for naught. Meaningless. A lot of people gonna freak out.
But they looking like it's not even worth it, you know. So they don't even want to work. It's like they're waking up to like this is vanity, like this is fake. So like I said, their plan was never to keep people so-called blind forever, because they knew eventually it's going to quit, you know. People were going to wake up and start saying like, man, I'm working at all these hours and I can have no bit of fun, you know. Basically they put so much pressure on their slaves that they had that they beat them to the point they spirit is gone. They're like, I don't give a damn, you know. I'd rather just not do nothing. I hope to basically get famous off streaming off, you know, social media and things like that. They don't want to I did a video recently, you know. They don't want to fight for this country, you know, because they feel like, what am I fighting for? A lot of people are like, you know, we're not fighting for the small head, big nose over there. You know, they're starting to see these things, you know, and especially it's going on in the media. You know, a lot of people are watching social media. You know, and even some of these, you know, so-called celebrities that's not in the truth, they're starting to come out with certain things. And like you said, man, these so-called celebrities are starting to come out with certain things. You know, even though they might come out with it, and soon as they get a little bit of heat on them, they end up, you know, folding. But that's the difference between them and the prophets, the true men of the Lord. You know, when that pressure comes, we already know what's to come. We rooted in the faith. You know, Lord willing, we can go to the end.
And if I can say this, these devils, like, you know, we talk about, you know, how every, you know, kingdom and society collapses at some point and it has an expiration date. These devils know that too. You know, they study all these past kingdoms, and they know that this current system that they have has to expire at some point. That's why they plan 10 years ahead. Everything that they've done through gradualism is to establish that chip. You know, so they knew that the current system that we have right now is never going to last for long, and that's why everything is happening the way it's happening, because they don't give a damn anymore.
They're ready to pull the plug.
They're ready to pull the plug on
You
this.
know, the American people experience pressure from all sides.
Yeah.
The economy sucks. I mean, did you see the recent reports about the Epstein files?
Yeah.
People saying that if the true list was to be leaked, it'd be a total collapse of society.
Yeah.
You know, and what? Because the Epstein files could be released way long ago. Why now?
Yeah.
And the reason why now is because they're ready to pull the plug on society. You know?
Trust me, if they wanted to keep things the way that they were right now, those files, we wouldn't even know the existence of those files, first of all, right? because the amount of things that they were able to keep in the dark, from centuries ago, are still kept hidden. So why is it that they allowed that specific topic to get put out? Because they want the people to get around it. They want the people to see, to want a reset, so to speak. Esau is a really, really crafty devil.
Yeah.
This Sirach chapter 13, verse 23. It says, when a rich man speaketh, every man holdeth his tongue. And look, what he said, they extol it to the clouds. But if a poor man speak, they say, what a fellow is this? And if he stumble, they will help to overthrow him.
So we had, certain celebrities like, Jay-Z or Beyonce or Cardi B or one of them out here speaking, a lot of people, they would stop immediately, pop off the buses, running up the escalators, when they speak, when they say things, they're stolen to the crowds, even if they speak the same thing that the prophets and men of the Lord been speaking for decades, once they come out with it, it's all of a sudden a big discovery, But when the poor man, even like the rest of the prophets, just average, everyday men that you see, they don't pay no mind to it. They think that, like I said, they think it's vanity. They think we're speaking vain words, but they don't understand that the words we speaking has a greater impact than a lot of these celebrities. You got people, they so fixated on what's going on, they hit with the bread and circuses, the gold, and like I said, it's the social media. You got this thing going around with, as of right now, as I've been saying, Glorilla, the rapper, her dyke sister, beefing with each other, that's all stuff in social media. Things of that nature, things that distract people from what's going on. Because when you got, the BRICS nations over there plotting and planning on how they're going to end up destroying this place, Like, they don't put that out, But if they do put it out, and like I said, a lot of people, they don't want to hear that because it's too boring. Because they so worried and stressed about how they going to make their next dollar, How they going to basically pay their bills, And that's why we know it's all by design, They know exactly what to do, keep them distracted and focus on one thing, because they're going to either focus on working to pay their bills or trying to figure out how to have fun, That's the thing about it. That's how we know we're still in our captivity. Like it says, I was at Matthew 17. Even our Lord even let us know, they don't bring this out in the Christian church, they don't tell it what it is. The Lord plainly let us know that we're in our captivity.
Bro, we live in an age of digital dummies, bro. Where status is like digital currency. You know what I'm saying? Like last week, attention is like an digital currency. Last week, because they said they don't regard anything, but the poor man said, but the rich man, they stole it to the clouds. Last week we had the monks. That was the hot take. People standing out in the cold for the Shaolin monks. Marching from Texas all the way to Virginia, and they said, what if they marching out here in the cold? They must have an important message. And that quote-unquote important message that they had was world peace. Well, the scripture says, what? There's no peace unto the wicked. But here it is, the prophets out here, man, it's cold, man. It's cold as hell out here, man. And it was even colder the last 2 weeks, man. Yeah. But when we were standing out in the cold, the prophets of Yahawashi Pilgrims, everybody makes fun of us. They make fun of the poor, man. They disregard what we have to say, man. But this is the message of salvation, man. You watch the new special of the monks, right? We had Jake with Jake woman speaking about the monks. She was saying this once in a lifetime. She said it was once in a lifetime opportunity. They're once in a lifetime opportunity, man. See the fucking monks march in the NPC, man. It's a fucking joke, man. Yeah. When we come out here to proclaim the name of Yahawashi Yahawashi, we come out here to tell you that the second return for Mashiach Yahawashi is going to happen in this lifetime. That Babylon the Great, this American hegemony, is going to be destroyed by the way of nuclear fire. Don't nobody want to hear that message, man. Mm-hmm. But that's the message of the Holy Scriptures, man. People are fucking joke, man.
Yeah, because ultimately these people want to hear.
They shall say peace and safety.
When you say world peace, well, how the hell are we going to get to world peace? Who has to be taken? People don't want to answer that question. Who has to be taken out of the way for us to get world peace? You know, they just think that Esau is just going to say, "Oh shit, I never thought about that." You know, and you know, and stop all the wicked things, and you know, stop oppressing the people, and we can just have world peace. It doesn't fucking work like that. You know, it doesn't work like that. Esau has to be taken out of the way, and Yahawashi has to make his return for there to be peace. There is no world peace without Yahawashi. You know, and that's why, and that's ultimately the reason why people don't want to hear us, because we don't come in that spirit. We come in a spirit that's contrary to what the world wants to hear. You know, the monks, even though they think themselves to represent something that's out of this world, they're of this world. They're 100% of this world. You know, because listen to them, that's world peace. You know, unless you have the power to establish it, then we don't want to hear that shit. You know, only Yahawashi has the power to establish world peace, and that's only going to happen when Esau is taken out of the way, and when Esau is taken out of the way, and the kingdom is established through Yahawashi Yahawashi. You got it, man.
I'll say real quick, man. Like someone said one time, we don't have a race problem, we have a problem race. And that's the thing, these people that take away. If I may real quick, this is Ecclesiastes 9:15, going back up to Shire. Now there was found in it, talking about the city, a poor wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city. Yet no man remembered that same poor man. Then said I, wisdom is better than strength. Nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heard. And we represent that poor man. Like I said, you talking about world peace, well, that is just, you know, you want to stay in this bitch as it is. You want this to continue. Right? And that's not going to be. That's all.
I mean, because, hey, shit, I ain't gonna lie, we want world peace too. But we know what it's going to take to get there. You know, and that's not, and what it takes to get there isn't what these people want to hear. They don't want to hear that Esau has to get put out of the way. They don't want to hear that he has to get put in slavery. You know, they don't want to hear that there's a nation of people that God chose over every other nation to be the ruling class in that world that has world peace. Yeah. They don't want to hear that. You know, we want world peace too. But we know what comes with world peace. That's the problem.
Because ultimately, a lot of people have what they call the Stockholm syndrome too. You know, they're in love with their oppressor. Yeah. And that's the problem. You know, the ones that seek Yahawashi outside, especially the men of the Lord, we have a kingdom mindset. You know, a rulership mindset. You know, we don't want. I mean, because of course we do the spirit, because it's an order in this thing, so we respect the order and how the Lord has it set up, and we like the righteous order, you know. So we don't want a wicked person ruling over us and ruling over our lifestyle, because like we were speaking on earlier, you know, we can't even have joy of our children, you know. We can't even basically have a child without worrying about the division of the family, because we got it so set up to the point that they cause conflict and chaos. You know, they have these women with so much leverage. You know, the fact of the matter is that we love the women, but they're not able to handle the power that they're allowed to have in this kingdom. You know, so they're going to use it and they're going to end up destroying themselves, and that's why we see the family structure being destroyed. You know, but sit right to That's one of the divisions that goes on in this kingdom. As you know, America is divided in general from the inside. You know, the Democratic and the Republican Party, and then they got the family structures that's divided. You know, it's a war between the man and the female about who should be in power, who should pay for this, and who shouldn't pay for that. You know, who should stay at home and who should be working. You know, it's all types of war. All they do is cause chaos and destruction, because that's what they were built to do. You know, it ain't like we coming out here and just making things up. It's clearly seen what's going on in the earth. You know, if you don't see it and you just purposely just don't want to see it, you trying to put a pillow over your head because you don't want to wake up. You know.
This is Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus chapter 25, verse 7. There be 9 things which I have judged in my heart to be happy, and the 10th I will utter with my tongue. A man that hath joy of his children, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy.
Man had joy of his children, and he had to see the fall of his enemy. Because contrary to popular belief, we have an enemy, you know, and we can't control it because ultimately the one that controls all Yahawashi has created this devil to be our enemy, you know. So there's nothing we can do about it, you know, besides strive lawfully until he's taken out of power. And that's what we look forward to, you know. That's what we wake up daily. Like I said, my short time in this truth, you know, compared to the Shire, you know, there's longer time in the truth. It's like, I'm ready for this thing to be over, you know. But of course, I wake up very joyful that the fact that I still have, you know, I'm still in the fight of faith, you know, but still, we still waiting for this devil to be over, you know. We need this devil to be in a rightful position that he should be in, the basis, you know. The basis of medicine is ruling us right now. And that's because of our disobedience, you know. That's why this thing is only for, like we speak on, the elect, you know, the small remnant. This is only for a few individuals. That's why a lot of people is not going to get it. We want to select them again, you know. We expect them to run this kingdom to continue on, you know, and on their day-to-day basis, you know, and we know that even if we stand out here till our face turn blue, ultimately, only thing that we're looking to please is Yahawashi Pilgrims, you know, because that's all, because a lot of these people, you know, they don't give a damn about what we doing, you know, like we speaking on, you know, they care about certain things, they want, a lot of people want novelty, you know, they always looking for what's new, you know, this thing gets old, you gotta have discipline when it comes to, you know, serving Yahawashi Pilgrims. You gotta have faith, you know, you gotta truly believe, you know, because a lot of people are ashamed of Yahawashi Pilgrims. You gotta continue to start a personal joy.
One of the biggest things that you have to have, you know, being in this thing, you have to have patience. You know, one of the godliest traits to have, one of the traits that that the Heavenly Father, you know, stresses is his long suffering. You know, and we have to be in that same like mind. We have to be long suffering because being in this truth, you know, preaching the word and, you know, feeling like nobody's listening and just waiting until that day where everything that we do, everything that we're doing right now gets paid off. It takes long suffering to do that. We're suffering while we're doing it, you know, and the reason why we're long suffering is because we have to be patient for it. We have to wait until it's the right, until Yahawashi, you know, makes his return, you know. So, you know, like you said, bro, you know, a lot of people look for novelty and they look for, you know, the quickest way out, or they look for a way to be able to play both sides, and that's just not how it goes. You have to be long suffering. You have to endure, persevere, long suffering until Yahawashi makes his return.
Patience basically means to suffer, you know. So I learned it, you gotta suffer, you know. Ultimately, the bad indignation of Yahawashi we sin against it. And that's the thing, like we talk about with 2 Corinthians 7 and 10, you know, godly sorrow working for repentance, you know. When you start to understand what we did and you start to read the scriptures and get into it and understand how many times we went off, you'll be like, God damn, like the Lord still care for us after this. That's why the scriptures say we were basically we punished less than our iniquities deserve.
Ezra. Ezra 9:13.
Basically, you gotta be a man ultimately in this thing. You can't be worried about what the master says. Yeah. You grow up, you know, and I need to worry about what you worry about a lot of people worry about what he say, she say, you know. I don't give a damn about what these people out here got to say, you know? Because I know that they got spirits on them, and they're not going to resonate with you unless you're going along with this world, you know? That's why the Lord, even though we live men, you know, the Lord gave us a value to understand where each individual comes from. We understand how we feel, you know? We're not going to look at each other sideways. Android and Apple and all this stuff, we're not gonna say those types of things to each other, you know, because we understand. But the person in the world will look at you like, what the hell are you talking about? What the shit talking about, you know? So a lot of people, you gotta be able to handle those things. Like I said, you gotta not be offended of your Yahawashi Yahawashi.
Spoke about being ashamed of the gospel. This is Mark chapter 8, verse 38. Whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed when he cometh in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. You got that, bro?
That's the thing, like, they don't understand how serious that's going to be, you know. The Lord bless you, God, you know, and all them like you, and you was ashamed of Yahawashi Yahawashi. It's like they say, you're going to have the last laugh, you know, because why everybody making fun of guys crazy, they see what they're doing and that, and they talking about. Even in our day-to-day life, you know, when we're talking to certain people to go against us, you know, to try to, you know, certain brothers might get kicked on or things of that nature, or get treated a certain way, you know. Those people gonna understand you got the last laugh, you know. You gotta understand your Yahawashi Yahawashi is always with you, you know. Because the Lord, like I said, the Lord sees everything. That's why He comes from the meek and the humble, you know. As long as we serve Yahawashi Yahawashi, it don't matter what the people in this world have, you know. We just gotta stay thankful that we have the truth. No matter if we lose things or not things, as long as we lose things, like I said, we can't be ashamed of Yahawashi Yahawashi. Like it's also like what I was reiterated.
Like the scripture I brought out, it said, it made sure to expound on the type of people you shouldn't be ashamed of this gospel for. It said this sinful and adulterous generation. These are the kind of people that is out here right now that that's not standing on this side. This sinful adulterous, and you should be, there has to be a sense of, righteous, boastfulness, righteous pride that comes with believing in Yahawashi Yahawashi, because you know that you're not a part of, you're spiritually not in the same place as the sinful and adulterous generation that's being spoken of, and that's why we can't be ashamed of Yahawashi, because we know what Yahawashi represents. He doesn't represent sin. He doesn't represent death. He doesn't represent adultery. He represents righteousness, and he comes and he is the volume of the whole book, and he represents prophecy in which he's going to fulfill when he makes his return. So if you're ashamed of that, then imagine Yahawashi coming and being ashamed of you when he comes with his glory, because he's not going to meet thee as a man. He's not going to come as the same man that you put on that cross. He's going to come with glory and power. In the very same time where nobody has power. He's not going to come when everybody feels like they got it. And they good. No, he's going to come at a time where everybody has nothing.
Yeah.
They're starving. Their stomachs is touching their backs. And they looking for somebody to save them. So hey, that's not a power I want to be ashamed of on this go around. I don't know about y'all.
Making fun of, and they get, like I said, they don't know what they talking about, they looking at us like we're crazy, But yeah, just go ahead, Brandon. It's just like, the gospel is reiterating more than, but it's going to go into more than.
This is Matthew chapter 10, verse 32. Whosoever therefore shall confess me before men, him will I confess also before my Father, which is in heaven.
Yeah, so who's confessing them before men? The men of the Lord, especially us here at Great Millstone, starting from our apostles and elders on down to the men that say doctrine of sin. We're not changing the name of the Lord, we're not changing up the doctrine, going with every way and wind, switching up, whatever feels good, we stand stiffly, and the same way we want Yahawashi to stand stiffly towards the that's why we gotta do what we gotta do. You know, we can't be ashamed to confess it. The person who did that for us, you know, he put his basically put his life on the line for us, his friends, like it speaks about it in John the 15th chapter, the 13th verse. You know, he laid his life down for us. And even, you know, for the wicked of our people, but they're gonna have to, you know, die in their sins because they're not gonna see it, you know. And that's why we out here to try to compel them to come in, but yeah, it's not meant for everybody to get it, and we understand that. And that may include some of our loved ones, you know, but that's part of the gospel. Like it says, that's part of the conditions of the battle.
Verse 33, it says, but whosoever shall deny me before men, him will I also deny before my Father which is in heaven.
Yeah, we see people denying, you know, just like the Genesis guys, you know, they like we saw the one that had they bought a hat for things of that nature, but when they jumped in front of those into Christianity, now all of a sudden they taking the hats off and doing things different, you know, and it's just looking at that, even though I don't know getting too much into their stuff, it's just like that's a slap in the face to Yahawashi, you know, because how you adamant about being rebellious when it comes to the truth, but when it comes to the lies, you don't know. And that's how we, like you said, a lot of people took the bag, you know, but they must have got a big bag to decide to convince them to end up taking that, to convince him. I guess it was the Hakai guy, you know, who took his head off, you know. That's how you know a lot of people love money, you know. You can't, like you said, you can't serve Yahawashi, Yahawashi, and mammon. And that's the thing, you know, that's how we know that you gotta have the spirit on you, you know, you gotta have the spirit of integrity when you come to it. You know, because certain people can be brought for a little or nothing, and some can be brought for a high amount. Just like the video I said with what's his name, Terrence Crawford. He asked the guy said, you can have my soul for $100 billion. Like, I'm like, what the hell? Like, so you mean to tell me if one of these Rothschilds or whatever coming to you and said, I need $100 million for you to do some wicked wild stuff. Now you gotta look at that man sideways like, I don't know, he might do that shit. Like, it's like, that's the thing. Certain people can be brought, but when these people can offer us $100 trillion, if nothing is more, you know, valuable than this truth. You know, like we said, price is above rubies.
Niggas say shit like that. They think it's so clear. Oh, I'll take it. Yeah, I'll sell my soul for $100 billion. I don't know what. It's like, man, look. If niggas like that, you just have zero substance. They have zero depth and they have zero integrity. You know, and niggas like that is exactly what the Bible speaks of. You know, these sellouts. You know, these sellouts. These niggas that would just these wicked Israelites that were the same ones, you know, that what's it called? That said let his blood be upon us, let his blood be upon us and our children. You know? These are sellout niggas. And you know what's funny? Most of these niggas think like that. Even if they don't say it. You know?
He was put on the spot. Like I said, you could tell he thought it was cool or something.
Yeah, he thought that shit was playing. I sell myself for $100 billion. You know?
I'm thinking when he said that, I'm like, you don't know what they could have actually do for $100 billion. You don't put on $100. They can say, I'm going to be $100 billion. I'm really big. Yeah. You don't know what it's like.
Niggas think selling their soul. I feel like niggas don't know what selling their soul actually means. They probably just think like you actually go onto the table and you just sign a piece of paper and say, yeah, I sell you my soul. Like, no, it means literally you'll do anything for that money. You know? If one of these elites just came with that money and said, bend over, nigga, you're doing that shit. You know? But when these niggas think it's something completely different, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna sit at this table and I'm gonna sign a contract and I'm just gonna have the money and there's not gonna be any sacrifice that I have to give for it. You know?
Yeah, niggas think selling their soul is sitting at the table signing their name in blood. Like, nah, man. You know, you taking $100 million, you know, like the brother said, you doing anything. That's selling your soul, selling your life, man.
Yeah.
You know, because you selling your integrity.
Exactly.
You know, because that's what a man of life is, man. You know, you're supposed to have integrity, a purpose in your life. And you willing to give that up just for a certain amount of money, man? You a fool. That's why Crawford said you a fool. It tells what type of man you are. You know?
Says a lot about your character.
Yeah, it says a lot about your character. But you got a lot of Jake like that. That have that mindset. You know? They have a lot of Jake out there that have that mindset. This is why the scripture says what? What does it say? Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. You know? Because all of it's corruptible, man. You know? All of it leads up to corruption. This is why we don't have our mindset on the riches of this world. Because we talked about it earlier, shit, inflation, $100 million. That shit, I mean, it is something. But but the way Jake's mindset is, that shit won't last long, man. You know? It won't last long, man.
Just to continue on, now I'm looking, like you said, now they're going to be looking for somebody to save him, and he got to constantly, you know, abuse himself. You know, it's just like these celebrities got to do. As I said, think about it, I'm like, man, they really got to, when like they said, the devil comes to collect, they really got to it's a constant perpetual slave, like, and you ain't got no way out, because ultimately you sold your soul, you know?
And that's one thing. The devil will always come to collect. He'll always come to collect. And that's why the scripture say, riches profit not in the day of wrath. You know? So no matter how much you think you can get, get from compromising your integrity, it's not going to save you. It'll never save you. You know? The scriptures does say, money is a defense, but against what? You got to take that into account. It could be a defense against, the trivial things of life, but when it comes to the actual things, okay, there's things in this life that money cannot buy. And these niggas can't comprehend that, because all they can think about with the tangible money is things that they can purchase. There's things in this world that money cannot buy. You know?
Genesis 3. Yeah, eventually I think that, I'm living a good life, but after a while, when the devil connect, eventually you're going to receive your judgment,
I start to talk. This is Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast in the field which the Most High made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath the Most High said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden?
Yeah, so that serpent, that was a man, for like, serpent that might still be it was a snake. It was an actual man, basically a cunning man, basically coming, like how we're speaking on, you can liken it to somebody coming to the table, selling their soul, you can liken that to, the Eve during this time, just using that for this situation. Right?
And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath the Most High said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, the Most High hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. The serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For the Most High does not know that in that day ye shall eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil.
And they say you gotta know the truth, tell a lie, in a way. So basically, you say you should not surely die. But like I said, even with these women, like when they say things, you gotta pay attention to the details. Like they might say, oh, I'm going to the store, I'm going to the grocery store, but they're not gonna add it to the fact that they're gonna stop over the Railway House, They're gonna once they get there, they're gonna say, I told them I was going to the store, but I didn't say that's all I was going to the store. Going to the store, so certain things, with certain people in situations, like we dealing with the devil. Like I was listening to one of the guys out from Mississippi town, like he was saying, when these devils give you certain things free, ultimately you're the product, so you gotta pay attention. they don't, like I said, they do good, they do it unwillingly, you know. So basically, you gotta look at it when you think that you're receiving a benefit from these devils. It comes with a cost or something. And like I said, that's why I always link the scripture to this devil's kingdom to a woman. Because even like I said, when you put that to a woman, when they acting good for the most part, I'm just having my experience. They always, it's something that they want, you know. It might not be that day, or it might not be right then and there, but it can be for the weekend. It's something that they probably planning on asking you, that they setting it up for, you know. You gotta have it back in mind, like, why is it acting so nice? And even, you know, certain, you know, guys that may look or something, look handsome or something. They might wanna have you use you to have a baby back, you know, but that don't mean they not gonna miss you. Once they get that baby out of you, they not gonna take it for child support, you know, and things of that nature. That's why you got certain people crashing out, you know, when they in certain situations, because they believe that it's a man, it's a spirit that's on people that make them act the way they act, you know. So you gotta keep that in mind, you know. The Lord has mingled a perverse spirit in this earth, like it says. So you're not gonna, if you're in this truth, you're not gonna be comfortable ultimately, you know. The Lord is gonna give you just enough so that you can get by, you know. But He's not gonna make you so comfortable to the point that you want to stay here, and you shouldn't want that, you know, especially when you're in this truth, you know. Because then eventually you're gonna get docile, and you don't want to get docile. You want to continue to fight to get out of here, you know. But like I said, that's the fact of the matter, that the Lord has to put the spirit on you to be a man, you know, to actually continue to fight this fight, a good fight of faith. Because eventually, you know, some people that can't handle it, they end up falling out, and it's getting close to the end, you know. And that's the thing, is people that's falling out, is getting closer and closer to salvation. But the Lord ain't gonna have no pity for them, because like it says,
Proverbs chapter 24, verse 10. If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small.
Yeah, so the same as there adversity, your strength is small. And like I said, as you know, it's getting down to the wire, you know. Of course, we still able to, you know, go to work and things of that nature, but eventually that's going to stop, you know. The Lord is going to continue to strip us down to ultimately all we're going to have to be able to depend on is our faith and trust in Yahawashi. And that's why we doing this work. Why we able to continue to work and serve Yahawashi, that's our ability. We building up our riches in the kingdom of heaven. That's why we out here, you know. That's why we constantly pray to the Lord with the Spirit to continue to come out here and to continue to do the work, you know, because we want to be able to be standing strong when it really gets down. Because like I said, I pray that the Lord, you know, keep the Spirit on us, but we know that basically. We know that it's going to get worse. You know, we don't know exactly how tough it is, but we know we're going to need a power to help us when this stuff go down.
It's 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 12. It says, fight the good fight of faith. Lay hold unto eternal life, whereunto thou art called, and hast professed a good profession before many witnesses.
That's what we're doing here. Point blank word, summing it up. All in all, we fight that good fight of faith, you know. We're not taking up arms and things of that nature. Because the only thing we know that we can have that's going to be able to deliver us is Yahawashi, you know. We hold on to eternal life, you know. And who has the power to give eternal life? Yahawashi, and we confess these things amongst everybody, no matter if we look foolish or not, you know. We're going to constantly look foolish for Yahawashi, because like I said earlier, at the end, we're going to have the last laugh, you know, when the Lord is delivering us from the trials and tribulations while everybody else is, you know, sitting there looking crazy, you know, weeping and gnashing their teeth because they either turned their back on this gospel when they had it, or they didn't even take a chance to even consider, like it says, the Lord, my people did not consider, you know. But that's all I'm saying. Lord willing, you know, this is edifying, you know. As always, we want to Say, call hello and lie.
Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahawashi, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash.
Number one honest our apostles and elders, the great millstone, teaching you well with truth and sincerity. Peace and salutations to the elect. Shalom.
Shalom.